class, okay? Which is about 15 minutes. Okay, one of the things that can be on the test is understanding the conventional ignition primary circuit. Okay, what you see here is the old style points. You see the points right here? That's an old point system. Huh? 25.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's okay.
That's the old style points. Okay. We also have a distributor cap. Here's the plugs. Here's the ignition coil. Now what happened, and here's the ignition switch. Now remember, I know this is old for some of y'all, I mean old for most of us, right? But how I look at this is this way. Any ignition system that you see right now, ignition system you see right now, the whole concept came off of a set of points. Believe it or not. So when I'm diagnosing an ignition system, I'm thinking about a set of points. Because the points is the ground to the whole circuit, the trigger to the circuit. It just was replaced with something fancier. So you got a car that has no spark, you checking for a trigger, I'm thinking about the way a set of points work, just electronically. Now look at this. Here's the coil here. That's the ignition coil. Now with the ignition coil, the battery voltage you see here, let me see, can I do this? You can't see that, can you? The battery voltage goes to this ignition switch. Okay? It also feeds voltage to the coil. Oops. It also feeds voltage to the coil. Now that coil has two circuits in it. It has iron core and two sets of windings. So we got battery voltage here, and on this side, remember, this is your load device, like electrical, that's your load. We have our power going to that side of the coil. And this here is my ground side. Now, as you can see, my ground goes to a set of points. The points complete the circuit. Alright, so the points actually complete the circuit. So what's happening here is, when the points are closed, my coil is charging up. So when the points right here close, the coil charges. When the points open up, the coil discharges and you get spark. You get spark over to the distributor from the coil wire to the distributor. We all know that from our basic old system, old ignition systems. Now, what's the resistor for?
They ain't doing cranking or something, man.
You're close, yeah. During cranking, we actually bypass that resistor and we go this way to the coil. But while the car is running, to cut down the current to the coil, help protect it, we go this way to the resistor, then to the coil.
So you get full voltage.
No, we get full voltage cranking voltage. While we're running, we cut down the current to protect the coil.
Right.
Okay, so to repeat ourselves again. So to repeat ourselves, the points control the whole circuit. When the points are closed, we ground the circuit out, we charge the coil. Right? We charge the primary side of the coil. Remember the coil has two windings in it. Primary side and secondary side. Right? So when the points are closed, we charge it up. When the points open up, the primary windings collapse and cut across the secondary windings. And this is when you get the voltage out the coil through the coil wire to the distributor. Now you can see here, it's showing it's getting spark. Right, so once the points open up and collapse, you get spark out. You get spark from the coil out the coil tower up to the distributor cap. When the points open, turn off. So it turns the coil off. Remember, the ignition coil is like a transformer. It transfers a low voltage to a high current flow, and to a very high voltage to a low current flow. So what it's going to do is it's going to take a low voltage and a high current flow and transform it to a very high voltage to a low current flow. That's why it's called a transformer. So basically, it's going to take battery voltage and turn it to like 20,000 volts. At this point here, number one, that's battery voltage. Okay, that's right here at the coil. Right there at the coil, battery voltage. Other words, it's off. I'm sorry. That's battery voltage from the ignition switch. At this point here, it's when the points close up or turn on. It's going to ground out. Let me back up for a second. Hold on. Let me back this up for a second. Let me say this again. Right here is battery voltage. This voltage on this side is going to be the same voltage on this end. The negative side. Because we don't have a ground yet. Okay. Since we don't have a ground yet, I'm going to have system voltage on this side and this side. At this, you see this little drop here? Right? That's when your dwell section turns on. That's when you ground out the coil. At this point, the coil is on. Right here, that's your dwell section. That's when the coil turns on. In other words, this negative side of the coil is being grounded by, in this case, the set of points. The points are closed. I'm grounding out the coil. I'm charging the coil up. Get ready to fire. At this peak here, this whole section here is the dwell section. Ready to fire the primary ignition side. At this point right here, it's when, oops, shit, I do that. That point here, the induced primary voltage, that's when the points open up or turned off. Turn off the coil. Okay? Right there, the next part after it fires, this little spark line right, this little line here, it's your spark line. It's actually your eyes inside the cylinder. That's how long the spark lasts across the spark plug. That's ionization section. That's the when the spark goes across the spark plug. And basically, these two, the fire line, I take that back. I say it in the second, wait till I get to the secondary. Alright, okay. So we got the fire line here. And we got the spark line here. Any questions on that?
The fire line is the same as the dwell?
No. The dwell is why. That's a good question. The dwell is when you charge the coil up, when you turn the coil on.
Oh, okay.
The fire line is when you fire the primary side. In this case, since we look at the primary side of the coil, that's the voltage. That's the primary induced voltage.
That's when it opens the point.
Yes, that's when it opens up. Yes.
Nate, it's Armin. So the fire line is when the coil is charging up, ready to hit, trying to fire, right?
No, the fire line is after it charged up and it fired. Then it fired.
End of fire.
Then it fired. Yeah, right here, this section right here, Armin.
Yeah.
That's when it's charging the coil up. When the coil is
so
on.
That's the oscillation of the coil.
This is when they take the negative side of the coil and turn and pull it to the ground. And it's charging the coil up right now, preparing to fire.
When the points are closed, right? When the lobe of the cam, he closed the point and then he ground the circuit, right?
Exactly. You're exactly right. That's when the points close. I should have said that. Thank you, Tito. When the points close, I'm charging the coil up, and that's the dwell section right here. This is my dwell section. That's when the coil is turned on. It's being charged or saturated. The fire line is when the cam lobe right here, the little cam lobe here, rotates and opens up the points again. And what happens now that the charging of the coil stops, that primary current collapses, saturation collapses, goes into the secondary windings. So right here, what you're seeing right here is the induced voltage of the primary windings before it's transferred over to the secondary side.
So let me ask you this, Mr. David. If that firing line was short, that'd be high resistance?
Yes. No. At that point, if I had a short fire line, that means I got a low resistance somewhere. Cause that's the voltage. That's the voltage that you go to the secondary side. That's the voltage required to jump 2 gaps, which is on the test also. To spark the rotor, the cap gap, the cap to rotor. I can't say it. The cap to rotor gap and the spark plug gap. Once it goes to the secondary side. The spark line, which is this, and how long that spark lasts, how long the spark duration across the spark plug, how long it takes to fire, maintain that spark. Usually like 1.2 to 1.5 milliseconds. The core oscillations here, the core oscillation is the remaining energy after the fire. Right?
Nate, it's Armin. So one question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. The spark line is when the plug is actually firing.
Yes. Right. That's the spark across
the fire line is right before it fires, basically.
The fire line, yes, the fire line is the voltage required to initiate the spark.
Okay, got it.
Right, especially in the secondary side. On the primary side, this is the induced voltage when it turned off into the secondary windings.
Okay.
So, see now, this oscillations right here is the remaining energy, right after the fire. It usually resonates back and forth between, back in the day, the coil and the condenser. So, and that's what we're saying here. So we got so right here we got, so number one we have what? What does this represent?
Voltage.
System voltage, right.
System voltage.
How about number two?
That's a dwell.
A dwell, exactly.
Coil saturation.
Dwell, that's when the coil is turned on. Because the points are closed and pulled at the ground. Right here, the system voltage, the points are open. At this point here, the points closed and is now charging up the coil. How about number three?
fire line.
It's a fire line. So this right here, since we're on the primary side, this is the induced voltage. Right, that's the induced voltage to the primary windings. Number 4 is
Spark line.
spark line. Right, that's your spark line. Right, now when you say spark line, what do I mean by that?
That's how much time it's taking to fire.
Right.
How much fire time for the spark plug, basically.
Right, the amount of time the spark lasts across the spark plug. Exactly. And number 5.
That's how much voltage is left over, I guess.
Yes, your remaining energy. That's your remaining energy as it dissipates between the coil and the capacitor. Back in the day, it used to be the coil and the condenser slash capacitor.
So
Now
they use that condenser so the points won't burn out back then, right?
exactly. Back in the day, that's what it was used for.
Right.
Now here, this is a clamp. This is a low amperage clamp probe. Okay. And when I'm looking at it on a DSO, the current running through the coil. This is actually a really good exercise or technique you should use when checking on a primary ignition circuit, especially on a DIS system or coil on plug. You can see the current run through the coil, see if it's shorter than that. I use this all the time when I'm checking like a DIS system, a coil on plug. Right, and usually back in the earlier coils, you can about, I think they said about 5 amps. The late models use like a little over 6 amps. And what you're looking for also, is how much amperage is being pulled through that coil. You're also looking for this ramping effect. Okay, look, when I mean a ramping effect, you see how it goes on the slope. And sometimes they say you want to see this ringing. I've seen some cars don't have that ringing all the time. Okay. But this is a current waveform.
And you looking at that the amps on the minus side of the coil?
It could go either side, because remember the amperage going through is coming out.
Doesn't matter?
Yeah, it don't matter. Yeah, what's going through is coming out.
Okay.
You had a question?
So they actually tell you how good your coil is, Mr. Davis?
You can tell if it's shorted. Yeah, that's a good way so you guys short a coil.
Right.
Yes, Marco.
What is the name of the number 2? You say?
The ringing?
Yeah. Oh, that's called ringing?
Ringing due to resistance, yeah.
Oh, ringing.
That's a resistance to current flow. You see that when you have resistance in the circuit.
There's the resistance.
Right. Now let's pay attention to this for a second. And keep this in mind. I want you to keep this in mind when you're looking at this. That's too big. Keep the coil and the trigger in mind, which is the points in this case. I'm looking at this. Now let's look at this here. At 1, we have 0 amps. Anybody know why? Exactly. It hasn't Somebody said it. You're exactly right. It hasn't been charged yet. It's not being grounded yet. In other words, we're right here. We're right there. System voltage. We're system voltage right now. No current flow through because we had no ground.
It's just a available voltage.
Exactly. There you go, Tito. That's exactly right. So if it's an open circuit, we got 0 amps. Now, at number 2, somebody just said that ringing is when we close the points or turn the coil on. That's when we pull the coil to ground, and it's being saturated at this time. So at that point here, that's why you see this resistance right here, that ringing, because due to the resistance, and that's when current starts to flow. This is when the current starts to flow. And right here, you want to say a smooth ramp. Ramping, I told you earlier, you want to see this thing ramp up like this. You don't want to see it do this. That's a bad coil. You definitely don't want to see.
Oh, it's breaking down, huh?
Yeah, it's overcoming resistance. That ramping means it's overcoming resistance. And up here, like I said earlier, that's your maximum current flow. How much current is running through that coil? So if I had a DSO hooked up to this, I would read how much current is reading right there. It's going through that coil. Let's show that later. And right here, it goes back to 0. What do you think happened here?
It open again?
Yeah, exactly. It opened. Once it opened, no current flow, so it drops back down to 0.
So you gotta have a load, and I get it now. I get it.
Because remember, all this relates to this. All that relates to this. Technically, all that relates to this right here. Coil on, induced voltage. All that relates to all this here. Current flow, coil turns on, coil turns on, current starts to flow, maximum current runs through the coil. On my induced voltage from the fire line and turned off, open circuit is right here. Then it goes back down to system voltage again down here.
Oh, so that's just dissipating the voltage.
Exactly. Just like it does here. Now, this is the last slide. I know it's getting late. This is the last slide. Understand that when I look at a module or DIS system, coil and plug, I'm thinking about this. I think about a set of points. And the points, this ICM just replaced the points. Inside of this, it's just a transistor, electronic set of points. That's all it is. Everybody understand that? It's just an electronic set of points inside the module. And it does the same job as the set of points we just talked about. Opens and closes the primary side of the circuit. It controls the ground in the circuit. Remember, these points, the points right here, all it does is control the ground side. Complete.
It's a switch.
It's a switch. Exactly. Yeah, I should say it's a switch. Exactly right, Ricky. It's a switch. And we just update it with a ICM to a transistor. To a power transistor, I should say. Any questions on that? So basically we just talked about the primary ignition circuit. Okay? How it triggers the coil. And next week, hopefully